Hey there guys, what's going on? You are tuned in once again to the Pharaoh's Vessel here on YouTube. Today I'm going to bring you another deck profile. This deck is from my Gravekeeper's deck. This consists of quite a lot of Gravekeeper's monsters. There's one or two odd monsters in there as well. It's quite a chunky deck. Obviously spells and traps that I find suited for the actual style of play. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Straight into the actual monster side of things on the deck. And I hope you enjoy the video. So starting off, I bring you 3 Gravekeeper Spear Soldier. Quite a lot of these are like, well, a few of them are 2 ofs. That's the only 3 of that I've got in here. And then obviously I've got single cards as well. So, like I said, Gravekeeper Spear Soldier there's 3 of. 2 Gravekeeper Spy. Nice little card at 2000 defense. With a flip effect of when it's flip summoned, special summon 1 Gravekeeper monster with 1500 or less attack from a deck. Next up we've got Gravekeeper's Guard, another flip effect card. Select 1 monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. At 1900 defense, it's a pretty good little stop at that one. I have 2 copies of Gravekeeper's Assailant. Whereas if Necro Valley is on the field and that card declares an attack, you select 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and change its battle position. And at 15/15 with Necro Valley on the field gives it a boost of 500, making it the grand total of 2000. Next up I have 1 copy of Gravekeeper's Commandant. Another nice little card. You can discard that card to the graveyard and add a Necro Valley from a deck to your hand. And I have 1 copy of Gravekeeper's Curse. When the card is summoned, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. I have 1 copy of Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder, which allows you to tribute 1 Gravekeeper monster, except for the Cannon Holder, to inflict 700 points of damage to your opponent. I have 1 copy of Descendant. You contribute 1 face-up Gravekeeper's monster you control, except that card, to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. I have a single copy of Heretic. While that card is on the field, it's unaffected by the other players' card effects, as long as Necro Valley is on the field. I have Gravekeeper's Priestess. The field is treated as Necro Valley, so if you've got her on the field, then I suppose it makes the Heretic's effect work. If there's a face-up field spell card, the effect doesn't apply, obviously, and all face-up Gravekeeper monster gain 200 attack ineffective, rather than 500 that you would get from the actual field card. I have 1 copy of Chief. You can only control 1 Gravekeeper's Chief in your graveyard. Hang on, I'll try that one again, I think. You can only control 1 Gravekeeper's Chief. Cards in your graveyard are unaffected by Necro Valley. When this card is tribute summoned, you can special summon 1 Gravekeeper monster from your graveyard and special summon it. I have one that I added just the other day, Gravekeeper's Shaman. The card gains 200 defense for each Gravekeeper monster in the graveyard. So if you've got quite a few of them, now there's obviously a fine selection of monsters there. Obviously it gains 200 defense for each one that's in the graveyard, so that thing could be quite nasty and hold your line if it needs to. I also have 1 Visionary, which is you can normal summon this card by tributing 1 Gravekeeper monster. This card gains 200 attack for each Gravekeeper monster in the graveyard. And if this card face up on the field would be destroyed, you can discard one Gravekeeper monster instead. And to finish off with Gravekeepers, I have the Oracle. The good thing about the Oracle is you can tribute 3 monsters, or just one Gravekeeper monster to tribute summon, but not set the card. When the card is tribute summoned, you can activate any of the effects and resolve in sequence up to the number of Gravekeeper monsters used for its summon. So if you use 1, you can just pick 1 effect. If you use 2, then obviously you get 2. If you use 3, you get 3. So, in order, they state this card's gains attack equal to the combined level that all monsters tributed for its tribute summon. So if you use just 1, say, and it's got 4 stars, it only actually gains 400 attack, and so on and so forth. The second effect is destroy all set monsters your opponent controls. So if they're face down, you can say Talar to them. And the third effect is all monsters your opponent control lose 2000 attack and defense, which could be quite handy if you're facing up against some rather tasty decks. That's it for Gravekeeper's monsters. There are a couple that I've got here as well that are not Gravekeeper monsters, they're just normal monsters. And I shall move on to those now. So yeah, moving on. These are the normal monsters that I keep in the deck. They're normally just a case of one of, just for now, and you know, they do some damage or they've got their own effects, like starting with this one, Legendary Fiend. During either of the standby phases, during each of the standby phases, this card gains 700 attack. So your standby, your opponent's standby, it gains 1400 over the set of the 2 turns, which is pretty nasty. Dark Geroid, which is 1200 by 1500. When the card is summoned, select one face-up monster on the field and it loses 800 attack. Boganian, another one of my favourite cards. During each of the standby phases, inflict 600 damage to your opponent. So if you can keep it on the field for as long as possible and, you know, stop him from attacking it or whatever, your opponent, obviously that'll make sure they lose 600 per standby phase. I have New Doria. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, select one monster on the field and destroy it. Which is another good one, especially if like your opponent's got something pretty sweet out that you know you can't touch. That card is the card to help you out. Dralago. If the only cards your opponent controls are face-up monsters with 1600 or more attack, this card can attack your opponent directly. So if he's down to 1600 life points and somehow manages to get all his monsters so that they're above 1600, and they're all in attack position obviously, boom, there you go. It's the end of the jokes. You've just hit him directly with 1600, unless he finds a way to stop it. Another a normal of normal monster now, Gilgarth, just to bulk the deck out slightly. 1800 attack, 1200 defense. It's a nice little straight shooter, especially if you draw it in the first turn or whatever. Obviously 1800 attack is pretty decent on its own. Compared to the fact it's a 4-star monster, you can pretty much bring it straight out and take it away from there. I have the Mystic Tomato. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one dark monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck in face-up attack position. That works well because quite a lot of the Gravekeepers that I've just shown you are actually under the 1500 attack, and their effects will allow you to bring other monsters in as well. Like for instance, the Gravekeeper Spy, it's only 1200 attack, which is 2000 defense. If you bring it out and place it face down, because it doesn't say, oh sorry a minute, sorry, it does stay on that card face up attack position, but if you can manage to get it down and then get the flip on it, you can bring out another card pretty much straight away. I have also Lava Golem. Of course, it wouldn't be a Gravekeeper deck unless you had Lava Golem in there. You can tribute it. Sorry, you can bring it onto the field by tributing it with 2 monsters that your opponent controls. You can normal summon or set that. You can't normal summon or set the turn that you special summon this card. And the monster's controller takes 1,000 damage for each of their standby phases. Unfortunately, with that card, it's a 3,000 attack card, but it doesn't actually state that they're not allowed to use it. So if they do actually manage to get the drop on you and pull out the fact that they can use the 3,000, they're only going to lose 1,000 of their life points per turn, but you're going to lose quite a bit more because he's got a 3,000 monster. So best way to do it is find a way to stop that card. And to finish off with these monsters, a Mystical Beast of Circuit. You destroy the card if you do not control Temple of the Kings. Each time this card destroys a monster by battle, the destroyed monster is removed from play and the card gains 500 attack. I've added up to, I think it was about 12,000 at one point. They literally just couldn't touch it, but it's all good. So yeah, that's the extra monsters that I've got in here. As you can see, it's quite a chunky one because you've got that, and then there's all these ones that are the Gravekeepers. Moving on next, we've got the spells. So yes, I bring you the spells of the deck. This is where I need to add 1 or 2 or take 1 or 2 out and, have a fiddle with this deck really. But monsters are set, spells and traps are as follows. So obviously we've got the Mystical Beast Circuit, so we need to have a Temple of the Kings. I've only got 1 for 1 in this deck. I'm thinking about boosting it and having 2 for 2, but I haven't decided yet if I'm actually going to do it or not. The controller of this card can activate trap cards the same turn that they're set. If you control Mystical Beast Circuit and this card, you can send them both to the graveyard to special summon 1 monster from your hand, deck, or extra deck. But as you've seen by the actual quality of the monsters in here, it wouldn't be worth it, especially if you've already got it out and it's up to something like 6,500 attack points, whatever. It's just not worth it. So anyway, Temple of the Kings. Next, we have Terraforming. Always a good card to keep in the deck for the plain simple reason that it helps you pull out your field cards. In this case, I've got Necro Valley. All Gravekeeper monsters gain 500 attack and defense. Cards in either player's graveyard cannot be removed from play, and cards in either player's graveyard cannot be affected by card effects except for their own, which is pretty tasty. As a old friend of mine who I used to duel with, he had the nasty little cemetery bombs and things like that, and obviously card effects can't touch the graveyard, so he'd play it and I'd go, "Don't think so, fella." As you can see, Necro Valley's pretty good to have in a Gravekeeper's deck. Obviously, it's literally the field card of Gravekeepers. We have MST. No deck is complete without an MST. We also have a Psychic Blade. I also have a Stim Pack. Equipped monster gains 700 attack. During either standby phase, though, unfortunately, it loses 200. Black Pendant. Another equipped card, 500 attack. When the equipped monster is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, obviously the Black Pendant goes with it, so inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. Then I have Smashing Ground. Destroy the face-up monster your opponent controls with the highest defense. If it's a tie, you can choose. Nightmare Steel Cage. This card remains face-up on the field for 2 of your opponent's turns. No monsters can attack. Destroy this card during your opponent's second end phase after the card was activated. Another little stall card that was in there. Anyway, Magical Stone Excavation. Discard 2 cards, then select 1 spell card from the graveyard and add it to your hand. Then you've got Lure of Darkness. Obviously the majority of the monsters that are in there are all dark, so it's handy to have. Draw 2 cards to remove from play 1 dark monster from your hand. If you do not have a dark monster in your hand to remove, send all cards in your hand to the graveyard. Obviously I don't use this deck for competition, and the last I checked, that was on the ban list. It's in here, like I said, because I don't use it for competition. I use it just messing around. But yeah, the Giant Grenade. Return all spell and trap cards on the field to their owner's hands. Which we'll come on to next, which is actually the traps. So, moving on swiftly. So yeah, now we've got the trap cards. To start us off with the trap cards, I've got 2 of my favourite cards. 2 very old cards as well. I've been using these since, I think, well, since they first come out, if I remember rightly. But the Sakuretsu Armor. You can only activate this card when your opponent declares an attack and destroy the attacking monster. Very good cards to have, hence why I've got 2 of them in there. Next up, we've got Waboku. Take no battle damage this turn. Your monsters cannot be destroyed as a result of battle. Acid Trap Hole. Select 1 face down defense position monster and flip it face up. If the monster's defense is 2000 or less, destroy it. If the monster's defense is more than 2000, flip the monster to face down defense position. Next up I have Nightmare Wheel. Select 1 monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack or change its battle position. When it is removed from the field, destroy the card. During each of your standby phases, your opponent takes 500 damage. You see, that's a good card to have, especially if you can pull it out in time, because when it comes to Lava Golem, you've got to put it onto your opponent's side of the field, and obviously Nightmare Wheel, boom, you play that, they can't even use Lava Golem for however long that card's on the field. All you got to do then is just make sure you defend it. Moving on, we have Malevolent Catastrophe. Activate only when your opponent's monster declares an attack. Destroy all spell and traps on the field. So it's another good card. The Transmigration Prophecy. Target 2 cards in the graveyard. Shuffle those targets into the deck. Or decks. Dark Illusion. Negate the activation of a spell card, trap card, or affect monster's effect that targets a face-up dark monster and destroy the card. Mirror Force. Won't give you details because everybody knows what Mirror Force does. Call of the Haunted. Another one I'm not going to go into detail with because everybody knows what it does. Metal Reflect Slime. Basically, after activation, you special summon it as an Aqua type monster with water as its attribute. It's at level 10 if I remember rightly. Yep. It's got no attack but 3000 defense. The card cannot attack, and it's still treated as a trap card. And lastly, Conscription. Excavate the top card of your opponent's deck, and if it is a monster that could be normal, summoned or set, special summon it to your side of the field. Otherwise, add that card to your opponent's hand. So basically, if you turn over the top card of their deck and it's a monster, it's yours. You can then put it onto your side of the field and do what you want with it. Whereas if you turn it over and it's a spell or trap, your opponent gets it. So yeah, that concludes, guys. That is my Gravekeeper's deck. That's my little bit of fun that I like to play with. Like I said, it's quite a chunky deck. Needs a little bit more spell and trap work, so I'll probably bring you an update at some point. But as a whole, it's pretty solid. It's all, like I said, low monsters that do their jobs and bring out others and give your opponent a nasty little sting that they need. And yeah, it kind of holds its own, really. It's quite a strong little deck for what it is. So for now, I'll leave you go. I'll bring you another deck update soon. I've still got a couple of decks floating around that I could do updates with. I'm pretty sure I've got an Odd Eyes deck here. I've got a Cyber Dragon deck here. My Magician Girl deck. And of course my Fabled Blue Eyes deck as well. I'll get all these into play soon and get some videos up and stuff. So for now I'm going to leave it there. If you like the videos, guys, you know, don't forget to click subscribe and obviously like the video. There's a little bell icon as well. If you hit that, it does magical things and lets you know when I'm posting new videos and stuff. And well, for now I'll leave it in your hands. If you wish to do it, then brilliant. Possibly pass me on to friends as well who are interested in the decks and stuff, or looking for an idea for a deck. And I'll catch you all again soon. Ciao for now.